What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so I'm sure you guys have heard by this point that, yeah, somebody tried to shoot up the White House Correspondents' Dinner and was caught. And Trump come out and he said this, and once again, he gets information before we do. And you should see how the corporate press, they're just ignoring this part of it because Trump said it. Check this out. Trump says shooting suspect wrote anti-Christian manifesto. And how is the corporate press spinning this? Well, he wrote a manifesto. He had some writings and all this other stuff. I guess because they haven't seen it yet, they can't go along with that. Well, Trump has, and clearly this guy, folks, look, we don't need more hate in this country. I know that the liberals and the atheists love to smear Christians as, oh, well, they're just generating hate. They hate everybody. Well, that's the opposite of the actual truth. So what I'll go ahead and do is prove this by please begging everybody to pray for this man. He needs help. There is a lot of sick individuals out there that need Christ, that need a Savior, that need love shown to them so they can be productive members of society, because that's what we want to be, right? We don't want to be a thorn in the side of society, for crying out loud. Most people just want to get along. Some people want to buck the system. And look, you can still be a productive member of society and still rebel against the system, if you will. And, you know, it's a complicated path, but there is a path. I've been down that path. I'm not on it anymore, that's for sure, but I've been down that path, and I did my thing, and I survived, and look where I'm at now. You know, I'm doing okay. We'll put it that way. Not rich, still struggle paycheck to paycheck, but I see that as doing okay. I see that as doing okay. But that's not the news article we're going to get into today, folks, because you guys know that, you know, I love to cover the news articles that are manipulative and that are trying to solidify people's opinions in a negative way from very disingenuous sources. So let's get into something a little bit different. Check this out right here. Tough on crime? Question mark. Trump Justice Department purges law enforcement jobs. Okay, so this entire news article is framed, well, you know, Donald Trump isn't tough on crime. As a matter of fact, he's defunding the police. Did you know that? While trying to smear Democrats as defunders of the police. While at the same time that Democrats are withholding funding from our main border enforcement, our border laws, our immigration law enforcement agency, folks. Yes. I wonder who's defunding the police. Let's get into this, folks. This thing is laden with disingenuous misdirection, manipulation, all of the above. President Trump professes to be tough on crime, yet his administration has let go over 4,000 federal law enforcement employees right off the top. I mean, they just could not wait to go ahead and manipulate the crap out of what they're trying to say here, right? Just because you fire people doesn't mean you're not tough on crime, right? Like a policy position, as far as how many employees you want to have working for you, has nothing to do with your mission statement, with going after criminals. You might think those two are connected, but they are definitely not mutually exclusive. And sure, they might have some loose-knit connections there. Like, sure, the more people you have, the more criminals you can go after. Yeah, I'll give them that one. But, folks, that is not to say that we all know that bad people work for the federal government, right? We can understand that. People that are just seeking their own ends, they're seeking to subvert the administration because it's Donald Trump. We know people have their own agendas. And honestly, the vast majority of the jobs that Donald Trump has gotten rid of are administrative jobs, right? Like second and third managers and unnecessary positions. Folks, we have several things going on here. Donald Trump has purged a lot of people that were involved in his own prosecutions. Now, from the outside and on the surface, that may appear to be some sort of retributive action or something like that, retribution, right? But is it though? Because when you go a layer deeper and you look into it, okay, well, some of the prosecutions of Donald Trump had absolutely no basis for as far as they went. Like, I'll give the investigations, right? investigate. But they didn't just investigate, did they? No, they went further than investigations. They went to the extent of raiding his home, dragging him down to Atlanta, and bringing him into Washington, arresting him, mugshot and all, right? Like, sure, some of that was state, but most of that was federal government, right? You had your whole Jack Smith prosecutions and all that, indictments, let's go to court, and all these other things, only to later just drop the charges. And like I've always said, folks, if these people truly believe that Donald Trump, a man, tried to overthrow the federal government, and you have all this evidence, you are the lead prosecutor going after this guy, and just because the man gets reelected again, all of a sudden, yeah, I'm just going to drop this because of policy. It's not law, by the way. It's just policy that we cannot prosecute the sitting president. But what does that mean, folks? Well, that means that if you have a guilty person here, right? Like, say, I don't know, somebody wanted to go after Obama for killing American citizens in Syria, I think, or was that Yemen? Yes, that was Yemen. Abdul al-Rahman al-Awlaki, as a matter of fact, and his son or father, one of those, I don't know, were killed by drone strikes. Killing, as a matter of fact, collateral damage there, killing other just regular people, right? They were in that restaurant, workers and all that other stuff, right? But unjustifiably, extrajudicial assassination. If somebody wanted to go after Obama over that, right? They couldn't do it because that was an official act. It was a drone strike. But if you have evidence that Obama knew that this guy, hang on, right? He didn't get any due process. He didn't get to fight the accusations in court. None of that. He just got blown up. That's it. He didn't get to present his own evidence, right? So if you wanted to go after and say, well, that's a murder right there, you could do that after Obama comes out of office. Same thing with the Jack Smith prosecutions. If these people truly believed that Donald Trump was guilty of trying to overthrow the freaking government, don't you think they would just, hey, let's throw those cases on the back burner, and when Donald Trump comes out of office, because it wasn't official acts, because you've already gone after him, and clearly the courts allowed for the prosecutions and the trials to commence, well, they'll do it again, right? So let's just wait until he comes out of office and then go after Donald Trump. But that's not what they chose to do, and it was a choice. They could have put this on the back burner, but they chose not to, folks. That tells you something deep right there, that these people did not believe the words that were coming out of their mouth. They did not believe that he truly tried to overthrow the government. That's what that tells me. Because, once again, the man tried to overthrow the government, y'all. I mean, that's not something you just let go. That's not something you just say, oh, well, Donald Trump wins an election. Really? And you're just like, well, maybe we'll get him next time. I'm sorry, folks. No. Reuters, citing records it obtained from the Department of Justice's management unit through the Freedom of Information Act, reports that several agencies have significantly cut their workforce. Yes. And it's, once again, this is also ignoring the fact that there have been reductions in force throughout the federal government. I mean, think about it like this. USAID was absolutely shuttered. The education department, for instance. Like, there's been firings all the way across the board. Does that mean that Donald Trump is defunding the entire federal government? No. As a matter of fact, he's not. Does that mean he doesn't care about any other federal agency? That's not what that means, by the way. But this is how they're framing it, y'all. This is how they are framing it. The FBI has lost 7% of its employees, 2,600 in all, since the 2024 fiscal year, while the Drug Enforcement Administration has lost about 6%. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have lost 14% of its employees. The DOJ division that handles intelligence and terrorism, the National Security Division, has lost 38% of its workers and told Congress in its last budget request that it had unprecedented personnel constraints. Yeah, see, and somebody just reading this and, thinking just right on the surface level might think, well, that seems to be contradictory, right? Well, not necessarily, folks, because you can get rid of unnecessary positions and still have not enough agents that are actually doing the job, right? Just because he fired those people doesn't mean there wasn't personnel constraints before he got rid of those people. That's what that means. And this is what they do. This is how they manipulate people, folks. This is exactly how they do that. Obfuscation. Even the Bureau of Prisons hasn't been spared. It lost 6% of its workforce, or 2,200 employees, with no reduction in the prison population. Once again, folks, that is completely and totally irrelevant. That doesn't mean that the 2,200 individuals were prison guards, because that's what you would need. If you have a bigger prison population, you would need more prison guards, right? You need X amount of prison guards per inmate or whatever. That doesn't mean that we lost guards. That's not what that means at all. Once again, folks, the vast, vast, vast majority have been like administrative positions, unnecessary positions, DEI positions, which are not pertinent to overseeing inmates. Just saying. The Bureau now has a staffing crisis and has been forced to use teachers and nurses as prison guards while leaving other posts empty. And once again, folks, that is not to say that that wasn't going on before Donald Trump took office. Just saying. The administration talks a big game when it comes to crime and terrorism, but the fact that it's hollowing out agencies tasked with addressing them shows that they don't stand behind their words. That's not what that says at all. Stacey Young, a former DOJ lawyer, told Reuters. She now leads the Justice Connection, a group that offers support to departing DOJ staff. In addition to having fewer employees, many of these agencies have been tasked with assisting the Trump administration's mass deportation agenda instead of conducting their agency's specific duties. That is not true. This continually gets manipulated by the corporate press, folks. Yeah, like Congress goes and questions the FBI director. How come Donald Trump moved some FBI people to go work with ICE and, oversee deportations or whatever? Well, that's kind of, once again, misleading and disingenuous, because what they're doing is going after, take people from the counterterrorism unit of the FBI and send them with ICE to go after terrorists. That's what they're doing. We're going after the bad guys in the country, so they are still doing their job while also attached to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, right? Immigration and Customs Enforcement may need some specified help to go after specific individuals that are just really bad people. It's not to say that they're not doing counterintelligence anymore, because, once again, that's not true. Plus, a lot of this, like the border shut down, so a lot of this counterintelligence doesn't need to take place like it did before, when the border was absolutely wide open. You see what I mean by this? There's a lot of, human trafficking, drug smuggling that goes along. So, DEA, they don't need to focus on the border as much, because there's not as many people coming across smuggling drugs, if you will. Right? There still is drug smuggling, but the fact is we don't have to go and watch individual people that were just crossing over into the country anymore, because there's no people crossing over into the country like that anymore. Now they can actually go and focus on their job to go after the drug smugglers who are not just immigrants, or not, filling up the populations of immigrants coming into the country. They can actually focus on what they're supposed to focus on and go after some of those people that slip through, if you will. But anyway, drug prosecutions are at their lowest level in over 20 years. That doesn't mean a damn thing, right? Once again, another misleading statement there. Just because they're at their lowest doesn't mean that that the agencies that are tasked with going after drug smuggling, doesn't mean that they're not doing that. That means they're catching less people, which doesn't mean that they're not going after less people. if you know what I mean, right? It's just there's less people coming across the border, so yeah, there's going to be less drugs coming into the country. People don't seem to get that, it seems like. Meanwhile, the budget for the Department of Homeland Security has gone up by billions, with ICE becoming the highest funded federal law enforcement agency in the U.S. in U.S. history. Okay, that's another misleading statement. Yeah, sure, that's true. On the surface, once again, this is something the corporate press does a lot. They'll give you the truth, a surface level truth, but it's disingenuous or misleading, right? I'll call this one misleading because, yeah, we had the big, beautiful bill reconciliation process that allocated several $billion, like I think $75 billion as a matter of fact, to go to ICE and CBP to help with detention facilities, hiring more agents, more beds, blah, 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 you know, technology, the list goes on, right? That was supposed to be separate from their annual appropriations process. Now think about it like this. They just told you that ICE, basically, and CBP, are the highest funded federal law enforcement agency in U.S. history, while at the same time, they're technically in a shutdown state. It's been like, what, 70 days at this point? Over 2 months that their appropriations have lapsed because Democrats are holding up their appropriations. So they don't have their regular budgeting. They're having to operate fully and totally off of money that was set aside. Like once again, folks, this would be like you saving up a bunch of money to do a remodel, right? And you lose your job. Boom. Do you think you're still going to be like, well, he's got more money than he's ever had? No, it's a lot more nuanced than that, don't you think? And it's the same thing. That's a decent analogy, honestly, I just came up with off the top of my head. But it really is a decent analogy because, no, you had that money you were saving up for a remodel to your house because, I don't know, maybe you have a growing family and you want your kids to have separate bedrooms and you want to add a bedroom onto your house and maybe something else, right? Like a ballroom or something like that. That's honestly totally funded by donors. Once again, that was something else. As an aside, Trump said, this is why we need the ballroom. Because of the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So they obviously can't secure a hotel the same way they would be able to secure the ballroom. But, you know, that's just what Trump says. We don't know exactly how true that is. It does kind of make sense when you think about it, but at the same time, you could also see that maybe there's a possibility that somebody might be able to do the same thing because, once again, in that video, those guys were just standing around and let that guy just run right on by them instead of tackling him then and there. As a matter of fact, that was their whole job. You had one job to do, my guys, was to not let anybody get through without them being checked for weapons and, you know, any sort of dangerous objects or anything like that. And he just... Maybe there should be some firings there so the Trump administration will be less tough on crime. Right? Funny how all that works anyway. Yeah, that's all to that news story. But look, folks, you know, Donald Trump is enforcing more laws than any president in American history at this point. Or at least he's trying to. Especially when it comes to immigration enforcement. They are actually looking at the Constitution and saying, well, we haven't enforced this law in forever. Let's do this. And you say, he's not tough on crime. Crime statistics are, as a matter of fact, down. Once again, we can look to the actions instead of saying, oh, well, Donald Trump fired a bunch of people that were involved in law enforcement, therefore he's not tough on crime. Or we can look at reality and see that he's one of the very few presidents, I think the only president, to ever send out the National Guard as a task force all over the country to crime-laden cities to prevent crime. Like, this... Did the New Republic forget about this? Did the New Republic forget that they wrote endless articles on how unconstitutional sending out the National Guard to go pick up trash is? The National Guard deters crime. They also help. with local law enforcement, which I am sure the local law enforcement welcomed with open arms to have free assistance in fighting crime. Like, seriously, folks, we are on track. I think 2025 was the lowest, we had the lowest murder rates, at least, in decades. Same thing with several other crime statistics. The lowest in decades, folks. So to say that Donald Trump is not tough on crime is an absurdity. Outright absurdity. It just is. Like, there's no way to beat around the bush on this one. And it's news articles like this that I fear a lot of people will read and be like, Trump is a hypocrite for this specifically. Now, look, you can make all the arguments in the world that Trump is a hypocrite, and I would probably agree with you on a lot of it, because everybody's a hypocrite, including the person that just called Donald Trump a hypocrite. Right? We've all been hypocritical in our past, right? We've all been that way. Maybe some more than others, for sure. But we've all been like that. So, it is what it is. We can all just engage in slander volley all day long. And, it's like the Bible says, y'all, judge not lest you be judged, right? And a lot of people take that to mean you shouldn't judge people. That's not necessarily true, because it says, judge not lest you be judged. So, if you want, your actions displayed for everybody to see, then go right ahead and judge others, which I do frequently, right? I absolutely do frequently. I've got a lot of things I could be criticized over. A lot of things, folks. I've had a storied past, if you will. A lot of people, I don't talk about it at all, but I've been in a lot of trouble. We'll put it that way. And it leads to nowhere, folks. It absolutely does. Even to this day. I talk about it in videos all the time. I've just recently come back in to my relationship with Jesus, and I'm changing myself slowly, day by day by day. The more I read, the better I get. The more I fight off the temptation, the more I fight back against the evil, the more I try not to commit certain sins. My habits have changed drastically over the past couple of months. So I'm becoming a new person slowly, folks. And I'm getting more and more confident in my relationship with Jesus. And, as I'm reading through the Bible, which I found an interesting passage. I was reading some stuff in Numbers last night that was just talking about how good God is, essentially, and how trustworthy he is. If God says something to you, right, you'll hear it in your heart. That's true. God cannot lie. Everything he says is the truth. He will never deceive anybody. He will never turn his back on anybody. He's formed a covenant with humans through Jesus Christ that we are saved. And all we have to do is believe, folks. We have to believe. Now, in doing so, we will be changed. We will walk a more straight and narrow path that Jesus has laid out for us, folks. I know I conveniently segued into my ending message here, so y'all smash the like button and all that goobly gobbly stuff, and subscribe and click the join button and all those things. That's something that YouTube recommends we say, so I do. Why not? If it's a recommendation, hey, I don't think it's a bad one. So anyway, folks, there's so many people out there that say, well, that's fake Christianity. And I just absolutely love how non-Christians will call Christians fake Christians because of, a misunderstood interpretation of what the Bible says. Right? Once again, this is why I constantly preach we need to be in the Bible, because it needs to be taken in full context, y'all. And it's a thick book. Right? Like we all know, it's a thick book, and some parts are hard to fully grasp the meaning behind it, right? You can read the words and understand the words and think you're on the right track. But, you go and search into the texts, right, to get a deeper understanding, and come to find out it meant something totally different, right, or something maybe slightly off from what you were thinking. So it is very, very good to read, reread, read it again, then read it one more time just to make sure you can fully grasp what's going on. It's also very important to understand historical context in reference to the Bible, how the writers of the Bible were thinking, the cultural aspects to how they thought and how they put words, on paper into language. So it's very, very complex, folks. Very, very complex. So you can't just snatch up a verse or two out of the Bible and say, well, Jesus said you're supposed to welcome the stranger. What does that mean in context of an immigration situation, right? What does that actually mean? Well, folks, what it means to me from what I've grasped so far is that, yes, it's okay for you to advocate for Donald Trump to enforce border laws. Absolutely. People enter the country illegally. They are breaking the laws of the land. We are supposed to uphold and abide by the laws of the land. And if that is a law, then it is okay for that law to be enforced, as long as that law does not completely contradict what we are taught to do in the Bible, right? And there is nothing in the Bible that says a country cannot have borders. As a matter of fact, God makes Israel what it is, right? God gives specific land, a specific landmass to the Israelites. Clearly states out the borders. So if they want to make a law that says, well, you have to do certain paperwork to come in to this land so we know who you are and so you can prosper and thrive as a citizen or whatever, you can pay your taxes, do all the things, right? Well, that's fine to enforce that, because if people are trying to subvert that. Now, once again, what it also means to me as an individual, right? Because none of that, welcome the stranger nonsense has anything to do with the government. Nothing. But at the same time, the government, we do welcome the stranger. As an individual, right? Anybody that comes to me asking for help, yes, I'm supposed to provide anything that I can, right? That's what we are called to do. So because I advocate that Donald Trump enforce the laws doesn't mean that I don't welcome the stranger. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, if you understand what I'm saying there. I can assist. Like if a criminal alien comes to me, wants a cheeseburger, I'm not going to ask about his citizenship status or his legal status in this country. No, but if he informs me that he is not of this country, what should I as a Christian do? Well, get him a cheeseburger, that's for sure. And then, try to tell him about God. That's something we are called to do as well. And if he, tells me he's in the country illegally, I will tell him immediately, look, you need to go find you an NGO, some sort of nonprofit that can get your legal status. That's it. That's it. You might think, well, shouldn't you call ICE? You probably should. But once again, you should direct, because to be a compassionate person, we should at least try to get that person the legal status first. Right? And depending upon how long that person has been in the country, right? If they're like a new arrival or something like that, personally, I wouldn't call up ICE or anything like that. I would just say, hey, you need to go get your legal status, because the current administration is on a tear right now. So I would watch out. But if it's somebody that's, your neighbor, for 10 years, come to find out they're not in the country legally, I would call up ICE. I would, once again, go tell them, hey, you should probably go get a green card or a visa or something. An H-2A visa would probably work out for you. Something of that nature, right? Like, you should probably do that, because I've got to do what I've got to do. It is what it is, folks. That doesn't mean we're not good Christians. But everybody falls short of the glory of God. Everybody, including the Pope. So, just keep that in mind, y'all. Keep that in mind.
And I think that's all I got. You guys let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Don't forget to smash the like button, like I said. And yeah, I've already said that. So y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.